Hello and welcome to another exciting lecture for developmental. In this lecture, we're going to talk about cognitive development in adolescence. This is going to be a very short lecture that we've covered most of the things in childhood. We're just going to kind of fill in the gaps in adolescence. So the first thing to look at in adolescence cognitive development is memory. So in adolescence, memory increases. Memory increases because new strategies emerge. New strategies like elaboration, where they're able to think about things deeper. And when you think about things deeper, you can remember it better. We learn techniques like if there's certain things that we can think about, like let's say we think about something relating to happiness. If we can relate something to happiness, we are much more likely to remember it than if we just think about it alone. As well as things like note-taking, the things that are relevant to learning in school. So learning and memorization in school, they become more important. They're taught in school. So in that way, memory starts to increase in adolescence because of these new strategies. These strategies, they're used deliberately and selectively. So there is information, selective information that is remembered and selective information that is not remembered. Whereas prior to this time, the level of information that is remembered, it isn't necessarily the most important things that are remembered. But now, because these strategies are being used deliberately and selectively, it becomes more relevant information that's remembered. And relating to that is we become better at moving the irrelevant or the unimportant information from our working memory so that it doesn't interfere with task performance. The exception to this is those with ADHD have more trouble with this. So, but we're not looking at that. Here we're looking at the neurotypical. Neurotypical individuals become better at not thinking about the things that are unrelated to the task at hand. So task performance does become better. Next, let's look at IQ. So IQ in adolescence, it basically the formal operations thinking is able to be done at this point. The improved memory is done, and information processing skills become better. So there's better performance on IQ tests. And we talked about IQ in childhood and how it's pretty stable, but it does have fluctuations throughout childhood. There are periods of time where it goes up, where it goes down, where it goes up, where it goes down. Well, in adolescence, IQ becomes much more stable. Actually, adolescent IQ can predict middle-age IQ. Childhood IQ cannot, but adolescent IQ can predict middle-age IQ. In childhood before this, really, the IQ scores are a really good predictor of school achievement, while that continues into adolescence. So those who have higher IQ tend to do better on school achievement. Again, like I said when I was talking about IQ, is motivation is just as important, but when we're talking about grades itself, IQ is a good predictor. When you're talking about success in your job after you get your full-time job, IQ isn't as good of a predictor. IQ is a better predictor of school achievement because in schools we do things that are more related to what would be done on an IQ test. Things like mental rotation and solving puzzles. As far as education, well, one of the things that's the transition from elementary school into middle school is a lot of things actually decline. Motivation, achievement motivation does decline. Self-esteem declines in adolescence. As adolescents are hitting puberty, they become more self-conscious, they become more aware of their bodies and their relationship to other people, so their self-esteem goes down. And as a result, grades tend to go down as well. Children do become increasingly able to realistically evaluate their strengths and weaknesses, though. Before this, the whole I'm going to be an astronaut when I grow up. I'm going to be a superhero when I grow up. Well, that's not reasonable, not realistic. In adolescence, these evaluations become more realistic. As a result, they may lose self-esteem because these things that they wanted to do, wanted to be, they realize they can't. You get the start of athletics here, and some individuals think they're going to go on to the Olympics or go on to the NFL, but the realism sets in at this point in time, and they can lose self-esteem. As far as those who do have higher academic achievement, it tends to be associated with a few things: living in a small, caring family with at least one stable parent who uses consistent discipline. These are a lot of things we've talked about already, but the small family means that small here, and that line did not go where I intended. Small family here means that that child can get focused care. Caring family, that's pretty obvious. One stable parent. So even if there is one unstable or there's only one parent, at least one stable parent who uses consistent discipline. This goes back to the disciplining techniques, and we'll talk about it when we talk about adulthood and things like that and the parenting styles. Well, that's consistent discipline is a component of good parenting styles. Mothers who talk to their middle school children about assuming responsibility and making decisions. It says mothers here. I assume it would be fathers as well, but the study looked at mothers. So mothers who talk to their middle school children about assuming responsibility and making decisions get children to make better decisions and get them more focused on school. And the last one, that students' perceptions that parents are involved in schooling. This is a bigger one than most people think. If students feel that their parents don't care, the students don't care. One of the biggest things that's been done to improve scholastic achievement and improve a lot of different things is the Head Start program. The Head Start program is a program designed mainly in areas that are low income or minority, where there's programs involved where the kids can get into school younger than kindergarten, and we're talking it's almost a preschool type program. Head Start, though, does things beyond that. One of the things they do is they require the parents, typically the mothers, but the parents, to be involved in the program in some way. So by getting the parents involved in the program, the kids see that the parents care, they start caring from a young age. And this carries on throughout the school years. So having at least a perception that the parents care is huge in long-term as well as short-term academic achievement. We can't talk about adolescent education without talking about science and mathematics. One thing is that on science and math scores, U.S. students test above the international average, but significantly below the levels of certain collectivistic Southeastern Asian nations like Singapore, Japan, and Korea. Now, there's possibly a couple reasons for this. One, we know for a fact that in these countries, the students spend much more time being educated. Most of them have school year-round. They're in school for longer periods of time during the day. So as far as the amount of time being educated, it is increased. However, one thing that's actually been shown to have an even more profound effect the amount of time schooling is the approach to instruction. So when it comes to this, there's the type of instruction is completely different in that in the U.S. we teach rote memorization. Now there has been a shift away from it, but we teach rote memorization. We teach it for all the different things, but it's not as prevalent in the other disciplines as it is in science and math, and especially math, where rote memorization of how to do something is taught. So kids they come in, they've got a instruction where it teaches them exactly how to solve problems, and then they are expected to do homework or practice problems That is that problem over and over and over again with different numbers until the point where they've memorized how to do that problem. They don't know what goes into it, but they know exactly how to plug it in because of this rote memorization. In science, and especially with physics and other ones like that, it's this kind of the same thing, where you're taught to memorize things, and even in history, you memorize facts, not learn what went into it. Well, in the Southeastern Asian countries, they focus more on the why, not the what, or the how. For instance, the math is the perfect example, the prototypical example here. In the US, a math textbook is huge. 300, 500, 600 pages long, just massive. In Japan, I've seen textbooks for similar age students that are basically a pamphlet, that are like 50 pages long. What is the difference there? Well, in the US version, there's a whole bunch of problems you have to do over and over again. In the Japanese version, there's basically one problem for that. And the way the teaching occurs is the instructor will come in, the teacher will come in, and they'll write a problem on the board. And then they'll have each of the students try to solve that problem. Difference between the US version already. The US version, the teacher starts by showing a problem and then showing how to solve it, and then showing a problem and showing how to solve it, and showing a problem and showing how to solve it. The Japanese version, they show a problem and the students have to solve it themselves first. The students try and figure out how to solve the problem. They think about it. They analyze it. They try and solve the problem without being shown how to do it. Then the students get into groups and they talk with each other about how they solve the problem. And the groups then come up with looking at ways to solve this problem. And then finally, the teacher brings the class together. The class discusses the approaches they've come to solving the problem. And finally, the teacher shows the way that is the best way to solve the problem if it hasn't already been shown. And even if it's been shown, the teacher will point out that that was the best way. So what is the difference here? Well, in the US version, the teacher is just teaching the students how to do it, telling the students how to do it, and they're memorizing how to do it. In the Japanese version, the students have to think about it and learn what is going into it to get to that answer. Instead of memorizing how to do it, they are applying logic in how to get to the answer. And when you apply logic, you are much better at remembering these types of things. You are much better at learning how to do things that isn't exactly equal to or the same as this rote memorization. So the difference in approaches to instruction are pretty pronounced. And there are places in the US that are going to this. Parents throw fits usually when this happens because the way they were taught isn't the same way their kids are being taught. One of the terms that's out there is new math, and some of you may have been taught with new math. Parents tend to hate it, like I said, because they were taught a different way. So there's people in the U.S., school districts in the U.S. that are doing it, but there's a lot of resistance. Some school districts, I know D.C. went to the new method and then had to switch back because there was so much resistance from the parents. In the districts where they are doing these new teaching styles and sticking to it, those kids from those districts are in the top of the nation. On average in the top of the nation for their school's scores. And some of these went from some of the worst in the nation to some of the best in the nation just by switching the teaching style. One other difference is that Asian parents, Southeastern Asian parents, tend to be more strongly committed to the education process. And we just talked about it on the previous slide. When parents are committed, students see that, kids see that, and become more committed themselves. And the last one, following teacher suggestions. This is a big one. And the teachers who know the education process the best make suggestions. Parents tend to follow it in the Southeastern Asian countries. In the US, the parents dig their heels in and try to tell the teachers that the teachers are wrong. The teachers who have been trained on how to teach, how to go about this, how to do this, are being told no by the parents who think that they know better about how to teach kids. The last thing we'll talk about here is integrating school and work. So in the US and Canada, about a third to a half of teens work part-time during their high school career. This probably only goes up. Working students do appear to gain knowledge about work, consumer issues, and financial management, and sometimes have greater self-reliance. So there are some advantages to be had from students working while they're in high school. They learn how to work a job. They learn how to do basic different things during high school that others that aren't doing these jobs don't get. However, high school students who work 20 plus hours a week have lower grade point averages. They tend to have lower academic achievement. They have lower chances of getting into college because of these lower GPAs. And working students, especially those who work more, are likely to be disengaged from school. They're more uninvolved in class, bored, prone to cut class. They spend little time on homework because all of their time is being spent at school or at work. So as a result, they don't have that time for that normal adolescent socialization that they need. And what ends up getting cut is schoolwork. Now, there is a healthy balance out there. There is a balance that can be had. Those who work less than 20 hours, those that tend to work 10 or fewer hours a week. So those who have a part-time job that they only work 2 days a week for 5 hours or something like that. Or a weekend day for 6 hours and then another day for 4 hours. Stuff like that. There's the advantages to be had from working can be pretty significant. However, the disadvantages that come from working too much are pretty detrimental and cancel out any possible gains. I said this would be a relatively short lecture. That's because, again, this is kind of just bridging between childhood and into adulthood. So that is all I have for adolescent cognition. Thanks. Come on back.